What if David Tennant's return to Doctor Who had been a flashback episode set during Series 4? What if the title sequence had included a shot of the Doctor and Donna hanging out of the TARDIS doors? And what if the final 60th special included an emotional farewell for Wilfred Mott? Believe it or not, all of these things were either planned, seriously considered, or came incredibly close to happening. To find out how we went from all of that to the era we got, let's discuss the original plans for the 14th Doctor. The story of the 14th Doctor doesn't begin with a casting announcement or a creative meeting, it begins with a global pandemic and a series of online watch-alongs. By April 2020, over half of the world's population was under some form of lockdown. Many found comfort in their favourite franchises, and few fandoms were as active as Doctor Who's. And that's where Doctor Who Lockdown comes in. Doctor Who Lockdown was a series of community-driven, online watch-alongs organised by Doctor Who magazine editor Emily Cook between March and June 2020. This was such a fantastic initiative because I love Doctor Who, it's a form of escapism for me, and in 2020, a lot of people around the world needed a form of escapism, and Doctor Who Lockdown really was that. So many actors, writers, and people that worked on Doctor Who episodes would be active during these watch-alongs and they'd be tweeting along to the whole thing. It was very exciting, but I lived in Australia, so a lot of these happened at about 1 AM for me, but that's okay. Who needs a sleep schedule? David Tennant and Catherine Tate participated in one of these watch-alongs, with Tennant's wife Georgia helping him take to Twitter so he could join in. Speaking to BBC News, Tennant revealed that the reunion happened by accident. He explained, "That's where this all started. At a certain time and day, everyone would press play on a certain episode, and some people who had been involved in those episodes were tweeting along. Me and Catherine would text, 'Wouldn't it be fun to do it again?' And Russell would say, 'We could do a one-off, maybe they'd let us.' And then as fate would have it, it was announced in autumn of 2021 that Russell T Davies would be returning as showrunner to Doctor Who. And of course, David and Catherine got calls to reprise their roles. I do wonder how Emily Cook is feeling right now, because Doctor Who Lockdown was such a fantastic initiative, but it also led to the 3 60th specials, David and Catherine coming back, and the creation of the 14th Doctor. I mean, it's a snowball effect. But here's where things get really interesting. Russell T Davies originally planned to bring back Tennant as the 10th Doctor, not a separate incarnation. The 60th anniversary specials were instead going to be flashbacks to unseen 10th Doctor adventures set during Series 4. Tennant explained to Radio Times magazine, "It would have been an unseen adventure from years before. Russell immediately had an idea for a story, which I'm not going to mention because I don't think it's yet seen the light of day. It certainly wouldn't have been part of an ongoing story, but I hope one day he does use it because it sounded great." Davies initially teased their return by not discussing the true nature of it, hinting on Instagram that Tennant and Tate may be reprising their roles via flashbacks or via alternate universe. But I should mention that before it was even confirmed that David Tennant was coming back, there were a lot of rumors as to who was going to take over from Jodie Whittaker. These included Hugh Grant, Michael Sheen, Chris Marshall, Richard Ayoade, Michaela Cole, Kelly MacDonald, and Lenny Henry. Davies' return also led to speculation that an actor who had previously worked with him in other projects would join him as the 14th Doctor, with Ollie Alexander and Lydia West being the bookies' favourites. But then something changed. Davies decided to make Tennant the 14th Doctor instead, creating a completely new incarnation rather than a flashback. In May 2022, Ncuti Gatwa was announced as the actor who would be the next Doctor, taking over from Jodie Whittaker. Well, so we thought. At the end of her final special, The Power of the Doctor, it was revealed following Whittaker's regeneration that the Doctor had regenerated into an incarnation portrayed by Tennant, with Gatwa being the 15th incarnation, not the 14th. Tennant became the first actor to portray 2 mainline incarnations of the Doctor. Davies states that despite the 10th and 14th Doctors' obvious similarities, the 14th was more human than the 10th. The 14th Doctor tends to say things that the 10th would never say. Also, I should mention, the 14th Doctor's clothes regenerated with his appearance from the 13th Doctor's, rather than him choosing his clothes like most other regenerations. Davies explained that he wished for the Doctor's clothes to change as part of the first regeneration from a female to a male Doctor, fearing it would be interpreted as a mockery of feminine traits and drag culture by having Tennant appear in clothing designed for Whittaker. Which on one hand I understand, but but I feel like Jodie Whittaker's Doctor outfit was specifically made so that anyone can wear it. In fact, that's what the 13th Doctor herself, Jodie Whittaker, said about the costume.
It felt timeless, it felt intriguing and kind of open to interpretation, and I really loved that. And it was neither male or female, which was really important to me.
So I don't know, it always irked me the wrong way, and they never really explain it either. Anyway, let's move on. Even though there's only 3 of them, the 60th anniversary specials went through changes during their development. According to Russell T Davies, the TARDIS sequence was initially meant to include a shot of the 14th Doctor and Donna hanging out of the TARDIS doors, which would then be changed to the 15th Doctor and Ruby for the next season of Doctor Who. He then showed the titles to Stephen Moffat, who liked it, but wanted that section cut out, which they ultimately did. Even all these years later, Russell is still getting notes from Stephen Moffat, and Moffat's like, hey, maybe don't do that. Crazy. For episode 1, The Star Beast, the Meep's true nature was meant to be revealed earlier in the episode, much like the original comic, but executives ultimately shut that down. Speaking to the official Doctor Who podcast, Russell said, "So in the very first script, it's like he'd be in Rosa's shed and she'd say, 'I was making toys,' and things like that, and every time she turned her head, he'd look at the camera and go, 'Soon I will feast on her blood,' which I thought was really funny. My bosses gave me notes. They said he revealed himself as a villain too soon." I wonder who this boss was that gave Russell notes. Was it Moffat? Is Moffat the boss confirmed? That would be truly shocking, but not as shocking as the amount of people that watch these videos that aren't actually subscribed. If you've gotten any value out of this series, please consider subscribing. Anyway, on with the video. For Wild Blue Yonder, rumour has it Russell T Davies briefly considered expanding the plot to include a cellar full of killer robots and a vault on the ship with William Hartnell inside it. Look, I did a lot of research to see if I could find anything to back this up, and it's not looking likely, so this rumour might just be total. Anyway, let's move on. Now let's talk about episode 3, The Giggle. Originally, Russell planned a very different and far more emotional fate for Wilfred Mott in this episode. Following the passing of Bernard Cribbins, Russell wrote an early version of the episode where the Doctor would explicitly address Wilf's death on screen. The idea was shaped directly by real-world events, as Cribbins had filmed scenes for Doctor Who shortly before his passing, even appearing posthumously in Wild Blue Yonder. Davies described this version as immensely sad, especially within an episode already dealing with reflection and letting go. However, that plan was ultimately scrapped at the last minute after producer Phil Collinson pushed back against it strongly. Instead of writing Wilf out, Collinson argued that the character should remain alive, around the corner as he put it, preserving his spirit within the world of the show. Davies quickly agreed, and the episode was rewritten so that Wilf is simply away during the events of The Giggle. The result is a much lighter, more hopeful ending, allowing Wilfred Mott to live on in the Doctor Who universe rather than being defined by a real-world loss. The biggest creative decision of the specials was bigeneration. The 14th Doctor and the 15th Doctor split into 2 different bodies, with 14 remaining alive and parked in semi-retirement on Earth. In companion show Doctor Who Unleashed, Davies explained that David is parked. For once, we've got a Doctor who is no longer saving the universe, but is parked with Donna for a happy life. So does that mean that the 14th Doctor can return? Well, Tennant himself hasn't ruled out another return. Speaking with SFX recently, Tennant said it would be disingenuous to imagine that he might never be asked to return again, because history would indicate that it was always a possibility. I'm not going to say never, because I don't think anyone would believe me. That doesn't mean I know I never will, but I suppose until I can't run down a corridor, it's always a possibility. So the 14th Doctor is parked, living a quiet life on Earth with Donna and her family, but the door is left open. He could come back. Or he might never appear again, but my money is on Christmas 2026. The 14th Doctor's era was shaped by accident, by a global pandemic bringing people together online, and by casual text messages between old friends. From a slightly cringy title sequence to Bernard Cribbins' tragic passing, the 60th anniversary specials could have been something very different. But what we got was a celebration of Doctor Who's past and future. The 14th Doctor may be parked now, but his very existence proves that Doctor Who can reinvent itself in ways no one ever expected. Thank you for watching, everyone, and be sure to subscribe for more of Doctor Who's untold stories, and click that video, because YouTube wants you to watch that one. I'm sure it's good.